I'd like to welcome Ian Simm. He is the CEO and founder of Impax Asset Management Group plc. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you.
Can you give us a brief outline of Impax Asset Management Group and its growth in AUM?
Impax Asset Management Group plc is an investment manager. We are specialised in a particular area of the market, which is trying to tap into the growth arising from the transition to a more sustainable economy. So if you look around the world, there is a revolution underway at the moment in the energy sector, where there's a big move towards renewables, away from coal. In the transportation sector, where there's a move towards cleaner vehicles, electric vehicles, and a move away from diesel and possibly in time gasoline or petrol engines as well. In the food sector, where there's more and more people on the planet wanting more and more food and healthier food, so there's a real transformation of that space, and many other sectors as well. So what Impax is doing effectively is using insights as to how those industries work and how those industries are changing to find companies that are really well placed for the future and to find price points for those companies in which it's very cheap to buy in. And so we're taking our clients' capital and creating portfolios around that idea. So that's led us into listed equities, into private equity, and most recently into fixed income as well through an acquisition that we've made in the US. And so we're able to offer both institutional and retail clients a broad exposure to these opportunities.
And clearly this has worked for you to date, thematics you've chosen. How do you see it evolving over the rest of the year and maybe going forward the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, actually, you're right. This is now our 20th year, so it's almost our 20th birthday, which will happen in July. And so we can look back on 20 years of solid growth. But actually, the most exciting thing is the prospect for the future. The future is really attractive because we see continued growth in the areas of the market in which we're focused. And if you look around the world at China, at Europe, the US, there's a revolution underway in transportation. There's clean energy supplanting or replacing coal, natural gas, etc. And with more and more people on the planet, there's more and more food being consumed. So within that context, then the companies that are providing the goods and services to address these opportunities are likely to carry on growing more rapidly than the mainstream economy. So within that, an investment manager that's able to really get under the skin of what makes the most successful companies tick and then buy them when they're cheap, that's the real opportunity. So we're planning to carry on doing that for the next 5 to 10 years and beyond.
So the outlook, it looks quite good at the moment anyway for the short and medium term.
Yes, I think obviously equity markets have had a big run up recently. There's been a bit of volatility in the early part of the year. But if you look at the valuation of the companies compared to their underlying growth rates in the companies we're investing in, then they look quite compelling for a 3 to 5 year view and probably for holding beyond that.
You recently made an acquisition of Pact World Management, who you've had a relationship with some years. Can you explain the rationale behind the acquisition and will you be looking at more acquisitions, or this do you think is a one-off?
One of the really interesting things about Impax is the fact that we've had a very stable team since the outset. So half a dozen of the team members have been with me since the late 1990s, early 2000s. We've not really been in the business of acquiring companies, and we found that the institutional investors who we serve around the world, from Australia all the way through to California, really value the fact that we're not acquiring lots of businesses and going through a change of culture or undermining or potentially threatening the rock solid culture that we've got at the firm. So we weren't actually looking for acquisitions. However, back in 2008, we teamed up with a US company called Pax World. Similar fund manager based in the US, obviously a little bit smaller than us. They had about $4.5 billion under management at the time. We teamed up to launch a fund. That fund was in the environmental space. And over the last 10 years, we've grown that fund together. And it's now nearly $700 million of assets. Now, it turned out that the family owner of Pax World had decided that they wanted to sell their large stake in the company. This is the end of 2016, early 2017. And so to cut a long story short, we were able to do a deal in which we bought the shares from the family. And as of January this year, when the transaction closed, we own just over 80% of that business. So looking to the future, we've already made great progress in integrating the Pax World operation into the main Impax group. And we expect to do a lot more fund launches on the back of the new products that we've been able to get hold of. We're not at the moment looking around at other acquisitions. It's not really the core part of our business. We wouldn't rule it out, but it's certainly not something we're looking at right now.
So possibly just a one-off at this instance anyway.
Well, I think for the foreseeable future, we've taken on a bit of debt to fund the acquisition. We've committed to our shareholders we'll be spending our time over this year and the next year or so making sure that the Pax team is happy. There's been no redundancies. All their team remain in place. They're a very well-run and very successful group. And we're looking for synergies around growth opportunities. So that's keeping us busy, certainly not looking out for other acquisitions at the moment.
Shareholders and potential shareholders obviously like growth in the share price. They also like to see some income, and obviously you've had quite a progressive dividend policy up to now. I think last year saw growth of 40%. Will you be able to continue to grow the dividend in light of your acquisition, or would you have sort of like a bit of a slowdown in the progressive growth for now and then perhaps recommence the dividend growth going forward?
Well, we initiated our dividend in 2008 in the teeth of the financial crisis, and since then we've grown the dividend every year. We introduced an interim dividend a few years ago as well. So we've committed to a progressive 2 times a year dividend payout. Now, as the business has grown, then the cash flows increased quite nicely. However, with the Pax acquisition, we've just taken on some debt, and so we have decided that we're not going to change the dividend policy. We're committed to that 2 times a year progressive payment. In the future, once we've paid off the debt and provided the business continues to grow healthily, there's no reason why we can't increase that and maybe move to more of a sort of payout ratio based dividend policy.
And just finally, for any potential shareholders, perhaps you could just an overview of why you think your business is a good investment from a shareholder's point of view.
Well, I think the investment management sector is going through quite significant change at the moment. There's definitely a lot of retail and institutional investors who want to move to passive investing, but that's a very crowded trade at the moment, and there's a lot of talk worldwide about the need for a second strand of investment management, which is focused boutique type investment management, where the investment manager has a very distinctive investment philosophy and is a global leader in what they do. And I think that suits Impax really well. So for 20 years we've built a position as a global leader in this area of sustainable development. We're recognised around the world by the most sophisticated asset owners and their consultants in that area. And so our business really is perfectly placed to carry on building a franchise as a boutique, a specialist area. So in that context, I think shareholders in Impax Asset Management Group PLC can enjoy being part of owners of a global brand in a rapidly growing space with a team which is the best in the world. And our track record, I think, shows that we can continue to deliver great returns for our underlying clients, and that should mean that the financial prospects for the firm should continue to strengthen. So I think in that context, it's a very intriguing company at a very opportune time to have exposure.
Ian, thank you very much indeed for coming in today.
Thank you.